Hey everybody, welcome back to MACkiteboarding Wing Wednesdays. I'm Tucker, and today I'm going to talk with you about the new Naish ADX Wing. Stands for Aerodynamic Extreme. So yeah, you get that shortened name ADX, and this is a really cool new wing from Naish, a little bit different from everything they've done in the past. So it's an exciting new launch to try out, and I'm going to tell you guys about today and my experience riding this wing. All right, so we have the new Naish ADX Wing here for 2023, and this is what it looks like. You got some cool stuff going on here, as you can tell, with some of this new fabric that they're using. Really, it's just multiple layers of Dacron that they're kind of staggering throughout the wing to add some more stiffness, but keep the wing light and keep the price low. You don't need to, you know, they don't think you're gonna need to go to some advanced level super expensive material, and this wing works really great with the way they've done this. So really stoked on that. I'd say one of the biggest changes we have here is the new handles, so we'll get to that. But really, this is a brand new wing, totally redesigned. It's not like anything you're gonna get from Naish in the past, whether that's the Matador LT, Wingsurfer MK4, and their other models. This is a totally new, totally different beast, complete redesign. And there's a lot of changes as compared to the previous year wings. So hang on if you're interested in that. We're gonna show you some of the features here, and then I'll talk with you about my review, some of the benefits of those features here in a moment. So we'll start from the front and work our way back like we usually do. Got a nice stiff surf handle here, neoprene pad underneath. There's like some rubberized material kind of sewn into the nylon on the leading edge handle. So I really like that it's really stiff and direct. It's grippy, which is nice. And it's just a nice shape when you're surfing, very comfortable. I will say, you know, as somebody with bigger hands, especially with 5mm gloves on in the cold weather, this space here is a little small. So sometimes I have to grab it with three fingers with a thicker glove on, just because the space in here is a little tight. So just minor critique for those guys out there in cold weather. Coming in here, we've got wrist leash here, nice metal D-ring here, so you know it's not going to break, especially in the cold. And it's got a pretty decent span here for those people with larger wrists, or if you're wearing thick wetsuits. You can also remove it here if you want to just connect direct to a waist belt or a harness. You can definitely do that, but nice upgrade on the wrist leash here. It's nice and comfy, and upgraded durability, I would say, for this year. Getting into our brand new hard handles here. The diameter of these is really small. It's one of the smallest diameters for hard handles or booms on the market. And it just makes it really direct and comfortable, especially if you have smaller hands, or again, you're dealing with, you know, thick gloves. This makes it a little easier to hold on to. It's also a little bit oblong, so it's not round, it's more oblong diameter, or sorry, shape here in the hard handle. They do have screws here to remove this section of the hard handle. These ones are sewn in, so you're not going to be able to remove these stanchions, but you can remove and replace the middle section here. These stanchions are a bit rubberized. I don't know if there's a hard plastic inside of there, but it's like a hard rubber, and the idea there is that it's not going to ding your board or hurt you as much if it hits you. It is still pretty blunt on here, so if it dings you in the head, I think it's still going to hurt, but hopefully it's not going to hurt as much, I think, is the idea. Yeah, we'll get into that with a review in a minute. The spacing in the handles is really nice. The placement of the handles is really nice. And, you know, hooking up a harness line is very easy, just to connect here and here. It's balanced out really well. So that's just kind of plug and play. If you want to use a windsurf harness line, you're going to have to, you know, pull the screws out to hook it around these booms, and then you're kind of going to have to leave it there. So that's something to think about. If you're buying multiple wings, you might need multiple harness lines if you're doing it with a windsurf style fixed harness line like that. The pump system is a one pump. You got the big thick valve, or the big thick strut hose here that connects the two, so the air flows really cleanly. There's no pinch valve here, so you cannot isolate these two from one another. You got to blow them up to the same pressure. There's no way to isolate that if you want to do that for different pressures or for safety. So I kind of wish they did have, you know, a pinch valve there, but small preference thing for me. On this side, we have a 9mm dump valve. These dump the air really good, but they can get a little stiff in cold temperatures. It makes them hard to get in, pull them out. So again, you know, for us cold temperature people, that's a minor detail. The hose is plenty big. You can evacuate out the hose, no problem at all. So probably a minor critique there, at least as far as I'm concerned, but something to mention. Going into our canopy here, we have some nice windows here. They are segmented, so that makes it easier to roll and fold the wing. And we have kind of a rear view mirror, so to speak, out here. The windows aren't huge, but they're placed in areas where, you know, they can be useful on certain occasions. The canopy is breaking away from the Quad-Tex canopy that they had in the past, which was a 4-strand ripstop pattern. And they're moving to the kind of macro pattern here, like a lot of other brands are using. It's a 2x2 weave, but it's a little tighter. So really, you know, the canopy for me is really stiff. It's good. It seems like it's going to last a long time. You know, I think it's kind of 6 of these, half a dozen of those. Do you want a 2x2 with a tighter pattern or a 4x4 with a bigger pattern? You know, honestly, I don't really care. They both work great. This one looks really good, works really well, so stoked on that. In terms of the overall frame design of the wing, it's very stiff. If you've ridden Naish wings in the past, especially the wing surfer models, you know the canopy is a little looser. This one is very tight, as you can tell here. I mean, this thing is really snappy and tight, especially through the trailing edge, through the foil section here. And the baffle even is just tight, just sitting here. It doesn't even need wind in the sail to get that tension, to build that shape. So it's a really stiff, responsive wing. That in combination with the new hard handles really just make it a very direct wing. You feel everything, you know where it's gonna go, you can tell it exactly where it's gonna go. And when you're going into the wind, when you're flagging it out, it's really well behaved. It's not shuddering and shaking and rippling through the canopy. It's really just hanging there doing its thing. You know, you do have some little soft battens on the wingtips, but the rest of the canopy is really well behaved without any kind of battens, so that's really nice. And you know, this wing just has a really solid, predictable feel, so stoked on that. In terms of a review here, really impressed by this wing. I'd say it's probably my favorite Naish wing they've ever made. I'm a huge fan of the Matador and the Matador LT. Those are just phenomenal surfing wings. They're so powerful and just balanced in the surf. It's so easy just to rock it up to the swell, ride it, let the wing flag. The ADX, I would say, compared to that, just unlocks a bit more free ride potential. It's got a bit more user friendliness, I would say, for a new rider. Not much, I guess, but just more range, especially in the top end. The ADX is just a little bit more well-behaved and predictable when you get into those hectic, gusty, high wind scenarios where you're overpowered. It still surfs really well. It's not really necessarily like a dedicated surf wing like the Matador is, I would say, but just a real well-rounded free ride wing that can work in a wider range of wind. So the ADX is a cool step forward for them. I think it's a nice companion to the Matador LT that they released last year. And you know, if you're not into that surf style riding, really after something a bit more forward pulling, something that's just more well-rounded in terms of, you know, free riding, racing, that kind of riding, the ADX is going to definitely fit into that category. It can be a little bit finicky with regard to sail angle, I would say, and I'm not exactly sure what that is about this wing. It's something that was more prevalent in other Naish wings, I would say, but this one too is finicky about sail angle. It's not just pull in and go. It's not just, you know, pull as hard as you can on the backhand and keep getting power. You know, you want to find that sail angle. I think it has something to do with the way the handles are balanced, which I really like, but it does make it pretty easy to oversheet if you're not watching what you're doing. And that's just gonna kind of limit your forward momentum. It's gonna limit your upwind ability if you're not watching that. So when you get this wing, get used to it, it's gonna take you a minute just to kind of adapt to that sail angle, find that perfect spot. And once you find it, you're like, man, it's easy. Your body adapts, you kind of know where that is. And then it's just good to go and find that kind of sweet spot, that power band where it does so well, where it wants to accelerate and drive upwind and just keep providing that good solid power. But it is one that you want to watch so that you don't oversheet the sail. Otherwise, you're not going to get that maximum potential like the ADX can offer. In terms of, you know, the design and the features of the wings, as I mentioned before, I really would have wished they would isolate the bladders for inflation, you know, with a SUP style inflation high pressure valve here and then also here. That would let you inflate, deflate independently. It would let you have 2 inflated structures for safety if one bladder fails. They didn't do that, but at least they have a good dump valve. They have a nice big inflation valve here that's not easily kinked, so that's great. I would love to, to see a valve clamp here, and maybe, if somebody wants that, they can add it after the fact easy enough. But, for safety, for sake of isolating bladders, personally, I would like to just see, either a valve clamp here, or independent inflation. But that's just me. I think most people don't really care. They just want to pump up their wing and go have fun. And this certainly does that. In terms of the leading edge handle, as I mentioned before, it's awesome. I just wish it was a little larger for my personal preference, because we ride in cold water. A lot of times we're riding 5mm gloves. So it'd be a little easier to get your whole hand in there rather than just a few fingers. Into the new hard handles, these are awesome. I really like the diameter of them. It's got really easy grip. You can just kind of fingertip grip these, which just really reduces the strain in your hands and wrists. So I really dig that. It's very comfortable. They're well placed, balanced, so you can really just put your harness line on there if you're using one, or grab the middle of the handle and go. Move your hand to the front of the handle if you're surfing or if you're going into attack. Makes it really easy and well balanced. The stanchions, the rubberized stuff is kind of a neat idea. Personally, I've never had one of these damage my board. I've never been drilled in the head with one of these or anything, and I ride a lot. So I think that's maybe a moot point to try to solve, but I do get, that, hey, a hard plastic thing on a thing that's bouncing around could potentially be, an issue. I do think they added weight when they did that. It's also kind of a bulky, rudimentary sort of a shape that isn't really comfortable to grip on that front stanchion. A lot of hard handles, you'll notice this is kind of an ergonomic shape where you can grip it like a pistol grip. You can kind of do that with 1 or 2 fingers, but it's sort of a funky shape, sort of fat. That just makes it a little bit more awkward to do that. I didn't think that was a huge problem. I mean, I rode this wing in the surf. I rode it from that front stanchion. Didn't really have any huge issues with it, but it is sort of just a more, stock looking piece. Doesn't look like, anybody put a lot of thought into how you hold that or what it might feel like. So I do think there's room for improvement there, but that, I guess does it for the handles. Overall design of the wing, it's great. It's a big step forward for Naish in terms of making a really rigid, stable wing that's easy to use, crosses over a lot of different territory in terms of riding style. This is definitely a wing where you could buy, a couple of these and go ride any riding style and be pretty darn happy. Really like the new Dacron layout and how stiff that is and how that transfers through the hard handles. That makes the wing just feel very direct and very predictable, and just know what you're gonna get when you pull in on it, when you grab it, when you pump it, and when you're riding in the surf. It's well balanced. I would say maybe not as well balanced as the Matador, being that it's a little bigger and has just a bit more tippiness to it. Totally happy in the waves either way. It's again a small point of comparison, but if somebody's looking for dedicated, specific wave riding, especially looking for something with a lot more punch on the low end, more grunt, the Matador would be the choice for that. So that's the new Naish ADX Aerodynamic Extreme. And if you have any questions, put those in the comments section below. Give a call to the shop, let us know what your question might be. We'd be happy to answer it. And you can always reach out via email or whatever as well. This has been Tucker with MACkiteboarding.com, and we'll see you next time.